we started with this metaphor of a permaculture in the culture as a whole and in our work. I didn't even know what that meant, but apparently it's kind of where, if I get this right, where different ecologies come together, and out of their, on the boundaries of their differences, a kind of new synergy develops. So that's, you know, that was the metaphor that kind of guided us. And then we quickly identified that this was the era where these high engagement, participatory, whole system processes, which had, you know, a number of them had been invented previously, but they really started to coalesce. It was the beginnings of the coalescence. Barbara's and Billy's book was the first time that all of these things were really brought together in an integrative way. And then we started talking about society as a whole and the technology changes escalating, and the internet in particular really starting to take off in the late 90s. And that how this, well, this came later in our process, but the whole idea of the internet being both simultaneously a place of convergence and divergence simultaneously, where it kind of allows for large groups to form, and also new kinds of small groups, virtual small groups. So that was very profound. So we talked more about social issues. You know, it was kind of the period of the dot-com boom and a bubble of things were just going to be fine. The end of history, etc. Then we started really connecting, though, with what brought us into the work, and we quickly saw that we came from so many different directions. You know, we really joined the field and connected with this work at a very diverse background, very, very diverse.
30 seconds.
And yet there was something about it that brought us all together. And we ended up with this metaphor of the eye of the needle, that there's something about the way this work was converging that was providing some kind of a forum, somewhat similar to the internet in a way, bringing us all together, well, allowing for great divergence and yet at the same time at least some possibility for convergence.
We're 2000s. We started out actually looking at the board, and we realized that there was a lot of second editions and 2.0s in 2000s, which we thought was really interesting, that this seems to be a time of refinement and evolution.
Oh, okay. We also noticed somebody had written up their positive organizational theory, and what we were thinking that meant was this
You've gotta accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative, and on to the affirmative, and don't mess with Mr. In Between.
But this was sort of about paying attention to what's working and building on that.
We also noticed that things had started to go global, so some of these things were starting to proliferate around the globe as well. I'll just do the next one. There's a real democratization of the field. It's really getting out there, communicating, organizing, the whole idea of empowerment, self-organizing. You can do this too.
And then we talked about sort of the proliferation of information and methods, and what came to mind was Myron the other day had said using every tool for every problem, and we really resonated with that there's this idea of being very holistic and self-aware and having knowledge about a lot of things, but knowing when to use it with whom is sort of part of developing practice amongst us.
And then finally, we talked a little bit about who are we, and yeah, our group was a little, woo, okay. We started talking a little bit about who are we in terms of quality. Now that all these methods are out there and people are really engaging with it, you know, they're going through Open Space, they're going through World Cafe, etc. But we seem to have this real a divergence in quality, and that part of the challenge or part of the implication for the future now is what is quality. Is this something that everybody can do, or are there some standards to it? And we think that there's some real implications for that work.
And paid attention to the extremes going from both positive to negative. Events that were specific in our field and those that maybe were a little more tangential. Emphasis on community and collective. We also noted the several publications and second editions. We noted an interest in healthcare, health disparities, and education. The internet and the web were big. Social and community focus, grassroots, collective gathering, international and global. Most of the publications in this period were multi-author, and people getting together to get their voices heard was important. Then we tried to connect that to what was going on in the world, and we paid attention to there were failed political figures, political transitions, and social transitions. The internet was seen as a way to connect people and maybe get voices heard, blogging. Attention again to global and international, and we tied systems conference and this conference together. There were also a lot of wars and violence, global visibility of local issues because of technology supporting information sharing, and we looked at what did that do with us. And the connection was a lot of individuals and groups are coming together, maybe due to social unrest, war, or terrorism. We noticed life and death, cycles of life, new beginnings and endings in what many of the people wrote. Discovery and change, and out of chaos came renewal. There were lots of comments related to transition.